Hi there, Renaud from Sofeast. I'm going to answer some common questions about product inspections, quality control inspections in factories in China. So again, I work at Sofeast. It's the company I founded in 2006, and we've been doing product inspections pretty much since the beginning of that company's existence. So the first question is, what are the different types of inspections that are done commonly? So the most common type of inspection is called the final random inspection. That happens before shipment, a few days before shipment in the factory. And what happens is the inspector comes in with the information, obviously, the specifications from the client, maybe an approved sample and so on. It's very important that they have all the information needed to see if things are okay or not okay, and very important that they know what is actually important for the client. Okay, so they go in when all the production has been completed, and traditionally when at least 80% of that production has been fully packed in cartons, basically ready to ship. Why is that? Because that's the way for them to quickly count the wool quantity, to count the number of cartons, okay? And maybe the supplier will say, well, there's still 10%, 15% unpacked. Okay, we go have a quick look at these unpacked products. We do a quick estimate roughly. Okay, it looks like it's roughly the quantity. But at least they have all these closed cartons in front of their eyes, and they can go, I want this one, this one, this one. Okay, and that's how they really pick cartons at random. And also that's how they make sure that the supplier doesn't hide some defective products somewhere in the back room, and that the inspector doesn't have any chance of picking, which is a big risk. Okay, so it happens at that time, and then the inspector obviously checks the packing, the packaging, the unit packing, and then the product itself, aesthetics, function, safety criteria, and so on. Okay, again, based on the type of product that it is, and the usual checklist that applies to this product, and any special attention points that the buyer wants inspector to have a look at. Okay, so the big benefit of this kind of inspection is that it happens before shipment, because if you find quality problems after shipment, it's kind of too late. You probably already paid, and that it really gives a good idea about average quality, because the samples were picked at random. Okay, that's really good. Okay, now if you work for the first time with a new factory, are you going to just do a final inspection? Well, the problem is, what happens if you do a final inspection and then a lot of quality issues are found? That's a problem, right? Maybe the factory doesn't want to unpack everything and sort them out, good ones here and bad ones there, and rework them, and maybe even reproduce some of them, or maybe short ship to you because some of them cannot be reworked, cannot be repaired. Short shipment means also less, lower payment and so on. So maybe they don't want to do that. Maybe they will dispute it. Maybe they will say, well, you should have told us about this kind of risk at the beginning. We did not know. It was not clear. You didn't tell us you didn't want this, and blah, blah, blah. Sometimes they even say, well, actually, we're a professional in this product. Actually, this is not a defect. This is really the way it should be, and you don't understand that. Okay, so which brings us back to clarifying your standard as well as you can, as precisely and specifically as you can. Okay, so this is sort of the limit of the final random inspection. You find some problems at the end when everything has been made. Now, so what? Ideally, the supplier again sorts out the products, does some rework and so on. Then there's the re-inspection at the cost of the supplier. Now make sure you write that in your agreement with them at the start. Okay, otherwise they might not be very happy with this, and they might not agree to it. But again, this is really a serious shortcoming. So if you do you work with a supplier for the first time, or with a new product, it's a new product or a new factory, the final inspection might not be sufficient because there are high risks that something wrong happens. So what do you want to do? In this case, you want to do an inspection earlier during production. Okay, very, very beneficial if you know that there are risks. So typically an inspector goes there maybe when they're doing a certain process, if you're afraid of something very specific, or simply when they are starting to have some completed products, and when maybe 5%, 10%, maybe 20% of the batch, the total quantity is finished. That's when we can go in and really check the finished products, totally completed, as just like in a final random inspection. Okay, and the benefit is that if there are some issues, we tell them right away. We tell the client obviously also right away, and people can start to talk to see what actually is acceptable, not acceptable. It can be a productive discussion. The factory can immediately implement some corrective action so that the rest of production is not affected by this problem, and also future batches are not affected by this problem. The quantity to rework is not very high typically because we go in the beginning of production. Okay, so all of this, keep it in mind, is very, very important. Okay, so these are really the two most common types of inspections: the final random inspection and the inspection during production, toward the beginning of production. Okay, let me go through some of the other questions. Who needs inspections done? Well, obviously we're a little bit biased to answer this, but if you are not 100% sure that the quality you're going to receive is up to your standard, it's better to detect that and to make sure you know about it before you authorize shipment. Because again, there's no return policy usually. If you're stuck with a bad shipment, you're stuck with a bad shipment. If you cannot use it, cannot sell it, I mean, a lot of importers have to scrap an entire container's worth of products sometimes, and that hurts. That really hurts. So if you don't want to have to run that kind of risk, you might want to have people do inspections for you, or to fly there yourself, or to have some other people to do the inspections. Just make sure that these people really have an understanding of what you want. And if it's not you, there's a lot of sourcing agents that say, yeah, we can do inspections, but actually they're not really professional in that. They don't give you clear reporting. There's no traces of proper sampling. I mean, we've seen a lot of so-called inspection reports that are just an unstructured email. Really, an inspection is a process, and if you really follow the process well, if the inspector goes through, counts the quantity, does the sampling very precisely as per a certain process, and then follows exactly the right process in checking the products and so on, this is how you really drive your risks down. Now, any inspection is better than no inspection, I guess. Except that if you do an inspection with someone who is not professional, they might say, okay, everything's fine, and then you saying, okay, well, I trust that person's judgment, authorize shipment, and then you go back to the supplier 1 month later and say, hey, we find all these problems when we open the packages, and the manufacturer will say, well, how come? No, we did not have these kinds of problems. By the way, even your inspector did not pick it up, so we don't think it was already there. So they can use that to their defense. Again, why you want to work with professionals here. Another question, first-time buyer, when they look for an inspection company, well, ask for at least an outline of what the checklist would look like. Okay, so you don't work with people who have zero checklist, zero experience, zero understanding of your product. Does it make sense? Do they actually try to listen to you, try to understand your product? These are important things. Now, obviously, it's always safer to work with inspection agency that's ISO 9001 certified. We had to make a few adjustments here and there, to be certified by BSI. If they are certified by a reputable Western company like BSI or some of the others, it's always a better sign. Okay. Apart from that, yeah, ease of communication, I would say, is quite important, because they will have to go there and actually understand what you want. So don't, it's not just about filling out a form and sending off your files, right? Next, what are some of the mistakes you see some new buyers make in regard to inspections? Not documenting the requirements, again, as I said, and this is a service we offer, by the way. It's pretty inexpensive, unless the product is very complex, but it's quite inexpensive. Send us some photos of your product. You explain what it's supposed to do, what's important to you, maybe a sample, so we have it in our hands, and we put together a specification sheet that you can then use. Maybe if you work with a lawyer, well, the lawyer will say, what's your quality standard? Well, right there, that's the document, it's documented. You can have the Chinese supplier read it and confirm it, very, very important. In some cases, they just have maybe a very junior person do the translations and not really understand things. So it's also important sometimes to have it translated in Chinese. Okay. And really, when it comes to quality assurance, and not just the quality control of the products themselves, but the biggest problems that impact quality is working with the wrong supplier. And that's really it's probably the number one mistakes that leads to quality issues. And so maybe working with a supplier that's way too large compared to your volume of business, or maybe too small and totally unstructured. Okay, these are the things you really need to look at. Or people who you just found on Alibaba, but you just forget. You just skipped all the due diligence, right? You need to go there and visit them, or send a company like ours again to audit them. You need to communicate with them, ask them some questions. Now, this is going beyond the scope of this video, but supplier selection is really the most important step if you want to receive quality products. Let me see, I had some other questions here. Inspection report. Well, every inspection agency will have their own type of report, so I can't really comment on that in general. What I can say is that it should be based off of a checklist. Okay, it's not just somebody going there, taking a few photos, putting them together in a Word document. No, it should be based off of a checklist. You should know production status when the inspection took place. You should know what went wrong. Usually for most consumer goods and also some industrial commercial products, it makes sense to follow certain industry statistics. Now again, this is beyond the scope of this video. You can just Google what is the AQL, acceptance quality limit. I wrote a long article about that to explain how it works, but basically the inspector knows they have to pick a certain number of samples at random and then check them one by one and then count the number of defects. Okay, and this usually, definitely has to be in the report along with photos. And maybe also if you want to review the defective goods yourself, maybe ask the inspector to put some samples aside for sending to you by FedEx or whatever option is better for you. Let me look at some of the things. Advice for new buyers for product inspection or global sourcing as a whole. Well, it's I wrote something like 1,000 blog posts on qualityInspection.org, qualityInspection.org. So a lot of tips and good advice there. I'm not sure I should make this video much longer, but let me know if you have some specific questions. Thank you. I hope it's helpful. Again, I'm the founder and CEO of Sofeast, a quality assurance company and also supply chain management company. We have a number of project managers who use who our clients use to work on a daily basis with Chinese suppliers. And we work mostly with companies that develop their own products. So we also have an R&D team that can work on prototyping, design support, and so on. Again, I hope it was helpful. Just reach out to me if you have any questions. My name is Renaud CEO. Thank you.